From the moment we become aware of our own existence, a question begins to echo in the depths of our consciousness. Who are we, really? It's not just a matter of name, profession, or even personality. There is something deeper, something that feels both intimately familiar and endlessly mysterious. This is the soul, or at least what many believe to be the soul. But before we can begin to explore how to find it, we must first understand what the soul truly is, and more importantly, what it is not. The word soul has been used for millennia across cultures and spiritual traditions, often with vastly different meanings. In some contexts, it refers to the immortal essence of a being, the part that survives death and continues its journey beyond this life. In others, it is seen as the seat of emotion, morality, and self-awareness. Some view it as a spark of divine origin, while others believe it to be the purest expression of one's true nature, untouched by ego, fear, or conditioning. But here's the paradox. The soul is not something you can see, touch, or measure. It does not appear on brain scans, nor does it leave behind any physical trace. And yet people across time and space have spoken of it with deep conviction. Why? Perhaps because there is an innate knowing within us, a whisper beneath the noise of daily life that tells us we are more than flesh and thought, that there is something enduring within us, something that remains unchanged despite all the transformations we undergo. A center, a stillness, a light. This inner knowing is what draws us toward spiritual inquiry, toward meditation, toward poetry, music, and art. It is what causes us to look into the night sky and feel both small and infinite. It is the reason we ask questions like, why am I here? What happens when I die? Is there meaning beyond my individual life? And yet the soul is not found in the answers. It is found in the asking itself, in the quiet moments when we stop trying to define it and simply allow ourselves to feel its presence. Because the soul is not something you possess. It is something you are. Not a thing, but a state of being, a depth of awareness that transcends logic and language. Many spend their entire lives searching for the soul without ever finding it. Not because it is hidden, but because they are looking in the wrong places. They seek it in rituals, in books, in gurus, in experiences. But the soul is not outside of you. It is not something you need to acquire or awaken. It is already present, always was, always will be. So why don't we feel it more often? Because we are distracted by thoughts, by fears, by desires, by the constant pull of the external world. The soul speaks in silence, and most of us never give it the chance to be heard. To find your soul is not about chasing mystical experiences or achieving enlightenment. It is about returning home, to yourself, to your truth, to the place where you no longer need to prove anything, hide anything, or explain yourself. It is about remembering who you were before the world told you who you should be. In this sense, the soul is not lost, only forgotten. And so, we begin here, in the mystery. Not with certainty, but with curiosity. Not with doctrine, but with wonder. Because the path to the soul is not paved with dogma, but with open-hearted exploration. As we move forward, we will look at how ancient traditions have described the soul, from Egyptian mysticism to Hermetic philosophy, from Hindu Vedanta to Buddhist teachings, from Greek metaphysics to indigenous wisdom. Each offers a unique lens through which to view this eternal question. And while none may offer the definitive answer, each brings us closer to understanding what it means to live from the soul, not just in theory, but in practice. For now, let us sit with the mystery. Let us allow ourselves to feel the vastness of not knowing. Let us ask the question once again, what is the soul, and why does it feel so important to find it? We will explore these answers together, step by step, in the coming sections. But first, we must lay the foundation, the ancient wisdom that has guided seekers for centuries. To truly understand what the soul might be, we must look beyond modern interpretations and into the vast ocean of ancient wisdom. Across cultures and epochs, humanity has sought to define the indescribable, that inner essence which persists beyond time, form, and even death. While each tradition speaks in its own voice, there is a remarkable consistency in the themes they explore. The soul as eternal, as a reflection of divine consciousness and as the truest expression of self. In Egyptian mysticism, the soul was not seen as a single entity, but as a composite of multiple aspects. The Ka was the life force, the vital energy that animated the body. The Ba was the personality or individuality, the part of the soul that could travel between worlds. Then there was the Ak, the immortal self that emerged after death, transformed through spiritual work and initiation. These elements were not abstract ideas, but lived realities for the Egyptians, who believed that the soul could be prepared for the afterlife through rituals, symbols, and sacred architecture like the pyramids. Their Book of the Dead served as a guide not only for the deceased, but also for the living, teaching how to align with cosmic order, Ma'at, and become one with the stars. Hermeticism, rooted in the teachings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary fusion of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian Thoth, offers another profound perspective. In Hermetic philosophy, the soul is not separate from the divine, but is rather an emanation of it. The Kybalion teaches that all is mind, suggesting that the soul exists within the infinite mind of the universe. This aligns with the principle of mentalism, which states that reality itself is a projection of thought and consciousness. According to this view, the soul is both personal and universal, a fragment of the one mind that experiences itself through individual awareness. The goal of the soul's journey, then, is to awaken to its true nature and reunite with the source from which it came. In Hindu Vedanta, particularly in the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, the soul is known as the Atman, the innermost self, the eternal witness beyond birth and death. It is described as pure consciousness, untouched by the fluctuations of the material world. The great saying, Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art, points to the non-dual realization that the Atman is not different from Brahman, the ultimate reality underlying all existence. The soul, therefore, is not something to be found outside of us. It is our deepest truth obscured by illusion, Maya, and ignorance, Avidya. Through practices such as meditation, devotion, and self-inquiry, one can peel away the layers of identification with the body and mind and realize the unity of the soul with the cosmos. Contrastingly, Buddhism presents a unique challenge to the concept of a permanent soul. The doctrine of anatta, no self, asserts that there is no fixed, unchanging essence that constitutes the soul. Instead, what we perceive as the self is a collection of ever-changing physical and mental aggregates, skandhas, form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. There is no eternal soul in Buddhism, only a stream of consciousness that continues from one life to the next based on karma. However, this does not negate the idea of continuity. Rather, it reframes the soul as a process, a flow of karmic tendencies shaped by intention and action. Liberation, nirvana, comes not through finding a soul, but through realizing the impermanence and emptiness, shunyata, of all phenomena. From Greek philosophy, especially the works of Plato and Aristotle, we find yet another dimension of the soul. For Plato, the soul was immortal and pre-existed the body. He saw it as the true self, trapped temporarily in the physical realm, yearning to return to the world of forms, the realm of perfect ideals. In his dialogue Phaedrus, he describes the soul as a chariot pulled by two horses, one noble, one wild, guided by a charioteer. This metaphor illustrates the struggle between higher reason and base desire, a theme echoed in many later spiritual traditions. Aristotle, while less mystical, viewed the soul as the form of the body, inseparable from it during life, yet possessing an aspect, the nous, or intellect, that could transcend mortality. His influence would later shape medieval Christian and Islamic views of the soul. Indigenous and shamanic traditions, often overlooked in mainstream discourse, offer deeply embodied and experiential understandings of the soul. Many indigenous cultures believe in multiple souls, some responsible for breath, others for emotion, memory, or destiny. In these traditions, the soul can leave the body during dreams, illness, or trance states, requiring healing rituals to retrieve lost parts. The soul is not just an abstract concept, but a living presence that must be nurtured, protected, and guided. Shamans act as soul guides, helping individuals reconnect with their fragmented selves and restore balance between the seen and unseen worlds. These diverse perspectives may seem contradictory at first glance, but when viewed together, they reveal a common thread. The soul is not merely what we are, but how we relate to the totality of existence. Whether seen as an eternal spark, a temporary aggregation, or a fluid continuum of consciousness, the soul represents the core of our being, the silent observer behind the storm of thoughts, emotions, and sensations. What becomes clear is that the soul cannot be reduced to any single definition. It is not a thing to be possessed, nor a destination to be reached. Rather, it is a relationship with ourselves, with others, with the cosmos. It is the question that arises when we stop identifying with our roles and begin asking, "Who am I, beneath all that I have been told I am?" As we continue this exploration, we will delve deeper into the inner conflict between the soul and the ego, the false self we often mistake for who we truly are. But for now, let us sit with the richness of these ancient teachings. Let us allow them to stir something within us, a recognition, a longing, a whisper from the depths. The soul has always been there, waiting, not hidden, but simply forgotten, like a melody that plays softly beneath the noise of daily life, waiting for someone to finally listen. At the heart of our human experience lies a profound and often painful tension, the conflict between the soul and the ego. This is not merely a philosophical abstraction. It is a lived reality for anyone who has ever felt torn between their deeper knowing and the demands of daily life, between what they truly are and what they have been conditioned to believe they must be. The ego is the voice that tells us we are separate from others, from the world, even from ourselves. It is the part of us that seeks validation, control, and permanence in a world that offers none. It thrives on comparison, fear, and the illusion of certainty. It builds identities out of roles, achievements, relationships, and beliefs, all of which can be lost, changed, or taken away. And when that happens, the ego panics. It scrambles to rebuild itself, to regain its footing in a world that suddenly feels unstable and meaningless. But beneath the noise of the ego, there is another voice, quieter, steadier, more ancient. This is the voice of the soul. Unlike the ego, which is always trying to become something, the soul simply is. It does not need to prove itself, defend itself, or justify its existence. It is whole, unbroken, and eternal, untouched by time, circumstance, or even death. Yet most of us spend the majority of our lives living through the ego, mistaking it for who we are. We build our lives around its desires and fears, shaping our choices, relationships, and ambitions based on its dictates. In doing so, we lose touch with the soul, not because it disappears, but because we stop listening. We become so accustomed to the sound of our own thoughts, our own stories about who we are, that we no longer recognize the silence behind them, the space where the soul resides. This inner conflict, the struggle between ego and soul, is at the root of much of our suffering. When we identify solely with the ego, we live in a state of constant seeking. We chase success, approval, love, security, believing that these things will finally make us feel whole. But no matter how much we achieve or acquire, the feeling never lasts. Because the ego is never satisfied. It is always looking ahead, always wanting more, always afraid of losing what it has gained. The soul, on the other hand, does not seek. It does not need to. It already knows what the ego longs to find, that we are loved, that we belong, that we are enough. Not because of anything we do or have done, but simply because we exist. The soul sees beyond the surface of life, beyond the illusions of separation and scarcity. It understands that we are part of something vast, something infinite, and that nothing we experience here, not even death, can change that. So why then do we continue to live as if we are alone? Because the ego is loud. It is relentless. It has been reinforced by years of conditioning, by parents, teachers, society, culture, religion. It has been shaped by trauma, fear, and the need to survive. And survival, from the ego's perspective, depends on control, on maintaining an identity that is strong enough to withstand the chaos of the world. But the soul does not fear chaos. It moves through it like water. It does not resist change. It flows with it. It does not cling to form. It embraces impermanence. And it does not seek external validation, because it knows that its worth is inherent, not earned, not given, but simply known. The path to reconnecting with the soul, then, is not about building something new. It is about letting go of what no longer serves us. Letting go of the need to be right, of the need to be seen, of the need to be special, of the need to be safe. These are all ego-driven impulses. They may serve a purpose in the short term, but in the long run, they only keep us trapped in cycles of fear, dissatisfaction, and disconnection. To find the soul is to quiet the mind, to sit in stillness and listen, not just to thoughts, but to the space between them. It is to notice the breath, the heartbeat, the subtle sensations in the body. It is to observe emotions without being consumed by them. It is to witness the drama of life without identifying with every role we play in it. And in that witnessing, something begins to shift. We begin to remember. We remember that we are not just this body, not just this personality, not just this story we have been telling ourselves. We remember that we are awareness itself, the silent observer behind the storm. We remember that we are the light before the thought, the presence before the name. This is not enlightenment in the traditional sense. It is not some final destination or ultimate achievement. It is simply remembering who we have always been. And once remembered, it cannot be forgotten. Though it may be overlooked again and again, buried beneath the noise of daily life. That is why spiritual practice is not about attaining something. It is about returning. Returning to the center. Returning to the source. Returning to the soul. And the more we return, the easier it becomes to stay. The louder the ego becomes, the more grounded we become in the soul's quiet knowing. The more we are pulled into the world of form, the more deeply we feel the formless ground beneath it all. In the end, the soul and the ego are not enemies. They are not meant to battle endlessly, one trying to dominate the other. Rather, they are meant to coexist, like the roots and the branches of a tree. The ego, like the branches, reaches outward, adapting to the world, navigating its complexities. The soul, like the roots, remains deep and still, anchoring us in truth. When we learn to honor both, to let the ego serve without controlling, and to let the soul guide without being ignored, we begin to live from a place of wholeness. We begin to live not just for survival, but for meaning, not just for comfort, but for connection, not just for self-preservation, but for self-realization. And in that realization, we find peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from having everything figured out, but the peace that comes from knowing that we do not need to figure it all out, that we are exactly where we are meant to be, that we are loved, not because of what we have done, but simply because we are. That is the soul's message, and that is the message we must return to, again and again. If we are ever to find our way home, if the soul is always present, silent, still, and unchanging, then how can we lose touch with it? The answer lies not in losing it at all, but in forgetting to listen. In a world that demands constant attention, distraction becomes the norm, and inner silence becomes rare. Over time, we become so absorbed in our roles, responsibilities, and routines that we no longer hear the quiet voice within. We live from the ego, driven by fear, desire, and conditioning, while the soul waits patiently beneath the noise. There are signs that you have drifted far from your soul's presence. These signs may appear subtly at first: a sense of unease, a vague longing, a feeling of being disconnected from yourself. But as time goes on, they grow louder, manifesting in emotional and existential distress. These signals are not punishments, they are invitations. They are the soul's way of reminding you that something is out of alignment. One of the most common signs is feeling empty despite success. You may have achieved everything society tells you should bring happiness: a good job, a stable relationship, financial security, yet something feels missing. There is a hollowness that material success cannot fill. This emptiness is not a flaw in you. It is a reflection of living out of alignment with your true self. When you live for external validation rather than inner truth, you create a life that looks full but feels hollow. Another sign is lack of purpose or direction. You may find yourself asking, "Is this all there is?" without knowing where to turn for answers. You go through the motions of daily life without passion, inspiration, or meaning. This is not laziness or depression. It is the soul calling you back to what truly matters. The ego wants control, stability, and comfort. The soul wants growth, authenticity, and connection. When the ego dominates, purpose fades. Disconnection from joy and meaning is another red flag. Life begins to feel mechanical, like you are moving through a script written by someone else. You may experience moments of happiness, but they are fleeting and often tied to external circumstances. Joy, on the other hand, deep, lasting joy, comes from being aligned with your soul. It does not depend on achievements or relationships. It arises when you are simply present with yourself, when you allow yourself to feel gratitude for being alive. Repeating destructive patterns is another indication that you are out of touch with your soul. You may notice that you keep making the same mistakes, attracting the same painful experiences, or falling into cycles of self-sabotage. These patterns are not random. They are echoes of past wounds and unresolved trauma. The soul does not resist change, but the ego clings to familiarity, even if it is harmful. Until you begin to heal these wounds, you will continue to be pulled back into the same cycles. Feeling disconnected from yourself is perhaps the most profound symptom. You may look in the mirror and not recognize who you see. You may wonder, "Who am I really?" without having an answer. This is not just confusion. It is a signal that you have built your identity around roles, expectations, and masks. The soul knows who you are beyond all of that. But if you spend too long identifying with the mask, you forget your own face. Fear-based decision-making is another sign that the ego has taken over. When you make choices out of fear, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of loss, you are living from the ego. The soul makes decisions based on love, intuition, and alignment. Fear keeps you small, trapped in survival mode. Love expands you, guiding you toward growth and fulfillment. Chronic dissatisfaction is also a marker of disconnection. No matter how much you achieve, how many goals you reach, or how many experiences you collect, nothing seems to satisfy you for long. This is because the ego is never satisfied. It always wants more, better, different. The soul, however, is content. It does not need anything to be whole. When you live from the soul, satisfaction comes not from getting what you want, but from recognizing that you already have everything you need. Lastly, a deep yearning for something you cannot name is one of the clearest signs that your soul is trying to get your attention. You may not know exactly what you are searching for, but you feel a pull towards something greater than your current reality. This yearning is not a problem to be solved. It is a doorway to awakening. It is the soul whispering, reminding you that you were meant for more than routine, more than fear, more than surface-level existence. Recognizing these signs is the first step toward reconnection. None of them mean that you are broken or lost. They mean that you are human, navigating a world that often pulls you away from your center. The soul does not disappear when you forget it. It waits, patient, unwavering, loving, for the moment when you decide to return home. In the next section, we will explore practical ways to rediscover your soul. Gentle, accessible practices that do not require dramatic life changes. Only a willingness to pause, breathe, and listen. Because finding your soul is not about chasing mystical experiences or achieving enlightenment. It is about remembering who you have always been. If the soul is always present, silent, still, and unchanging, then finding it is not about acquiring something new, but about removing what has been covering it. The practices that lead to soul awakening are not complex rituals or esoteric techniques. They are simple, accessible, and deeply personal. They require no special tools, no gurus, no dramatic life changes, only a willingness to slow down, listen, and feel. The first and most essential practice is solitude. Not isolation, but intentional time alone, away from distractions, responsibilities, and external noise. In solitude, we begin to notice the subtle presence of the soul beneath the constant chatter of the mind. It may start as a faint whisper, a quiet knowing that was always there but too easily drowned out by daily life. This is why many spiritual traditions emphasize retreat, whether into the wilderness, a monastery, or simply a quiet room, because in silence, the soul begins to speak. Silence, both external and internal, is another gateway. External silence means turning off the noise. Phones, social media, television, even conversations. Internal silence means observing the mind without getting caught up in its stories. Meditation is one of the most powerful ways to cultivate this inner silence. It doesn't have to be elaborate or rigid. Just sit, breathe, and watch your thoughts pass like clouds in the sky. Over time, you will notice that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. And in that awareness, the soul begins to reveal itself. Journaling is another gentle yet profound tool for rediscovery. Writing creates space between who we think we are and who we truly are. By putting our thoughts on paper, we begin to see patterns, attachments, fears, and desires that shape our identity. Ask yourself questions like, who would I be if I had no roles? What do I love without needing anything in return? When do I feel most at peace with myself? These are not meant to be answered logically, but explored emotionally and intuitively. The answers will not come all at once. They will unfold slowly, like petals opening to light. Meditation itself deserves deeper attention. It is not about stopping thoughts. That is impossible. It is about changing your relationship to them. In meditation, you learn to observe without judgment, to rest in the gaps between thoughts rather than filling them with distraction. Many people find that during deep meditation, there is a moment when the mind becomes still, not empty, but full of presence. That presence is the soul. It is not found through effort, but through surrender. Dream work is another overlooked but powerful path. Dreams are where the unconscious speaks, where the soul communicates in symbols, emotions, and visions. Keeping a dream journal, reflecting on recurring themes, and even learning lucid dreaming can help you connect with the deeper layers of your being. Pay attention to dreams that leave you with a sense of awe, mystery, or déjà vu. These are often messages from the soul, guiding you toward greater self-awareness. Nature immersion is perhaps the most intuitive way to reconnect. There is something inherently healing about being in nature. Walking through forests, sitting by rivers, watching sunsets. Nature does not demand performance or achievement. It simply exists. In its presence, we remember that we too are part of something vast and eternal. We stop trying to be something and simply allow ourselves to be. This is why many indigenous traditions speak of the earth soul, the recognition that we are not separate from the world around us, but woven into its very fabric. Ritual, not as religious obligation, but as sacred intention, also plays a role. Lighting a candle, burning incense, creating an altar, or setting aside a specific time each day to pause and reflect. These small acts create space for the soul to be acknowledged. Rituals anchor us in the present moment, reminding us that life itself can be sacred if we choose to see it that way. And finally, love. Not romantic love, not conditional love, but the kind of love that flows freely from within. The soul does not ask for love, it is love. When we open ourselves to loving without expectation, without need, without fear, we align more closely with our true nature. This includes self-love, not vanity, but compassion. Learning to treat yourself with kindness, especially in moments of failure or doubt, is one of the deepest ways to honor the soul. None of these practices guarantee instant transformation, but over time, they begin to shift your awareness. You start to live less from the ego, that voice of fear, comparison, and control, and more from the soul, that quiet center of peace, wisdom, and connection. You begin to make choices not based on what others expect, but on what feels true to your innermost self. Rediscovering the soul is not a destination. It is a journey, one that unfolds gradually, moment by moment, breath by breath. It is not about becoming something new, but remembering who you have always been. And in that remembering, there is freedom. In the final section, we will explore the ultimate question. What does your soul want from this life? Because once you begin to reconnect with your soul, the next step is not just to know it, but to live from it. As we come to the end of this journey, or perhaps the beginning, there is one final question that lingers in the quiet space between thoughts. What does your soul want from this life? It is not a question that can be answered with logic alone. It requires feeling, reflection, and a willingness to sit in stillness long enough for the answer to arise, not as a statement, but as a knowing. The ego has many answers. It wants success, validation, comfort, control. It seeks external proof that you matter, that you are loved, that you belong. But the soul does not ask for these things. Its desires are quieter, deeper, more ancient. Your soul does not want you to be perfect. It does not want you to suffer. It does not want you to chase enlightenment or accumulate spiritual knowledge like trophies. What your soul truly wants, what it has always wanted, is simply to be known. To live from the soul is to stop searching outside yourself for something you already are. It is to stop trying to become someone else, and instead, return to who you have always been beneath the masks, roles, and stories. It is to recognize that you are not here to earn love. You are here to remember that you already are love. This may sound simple, even abstract. But consider this. Every moment of peace, joy, or clarity you have ever experienced, even if only fleeting, was a moment when you were aligned with your soul, when the noise of the world faded, even briefly, and you felt the presence behind the form, the stillness behind the motion, the light behind the thought. These moments are not accidents. They are invitations. They remind you that you are not just a body moving through time, not just a mind filled with stories, but a being of awareness, capable of deep connection, not only with others, but with yourself. So again, what does your soul want from this life? Perhaps it wants you to slow down, to stop running from your own truth, to stop pretending everything is fine when it isn't, to stop sacrificing your peace for approval, to stop burying your pain because you think you should be stronger, to stop silencing your voice because you fear judgment, to stop waiting for permission to be who you are. Your soul wants you to come home, not to some distant place, not to some future version of yourself, but to the present moment, to the breath in your lungs, to the beating of your heart, to the quiet knowing that you are part of something vast, something eternal. And once you remember that, everything changes. You begin to live not out of fear, but out of love, not out of lack, but out of wholeness, not out of separation, but out of connection. You begin to see that the soul does not seek perfection. It seeks presence. It does not demand certainty. It thrives in mystery. It does not need to understand everything. It only needs you to trust that you are exactly where you are meant to be. In the words of Ram Dass, whose wisdom echoes at the end of our journey today, when you die, there is only one question that matters. How much did you love? That is the soul's deepest longing, not for grand gestures or poetic declarations, but for you to live each moment with authenticity, compassion, and openness. To love not just others, but yourself. To love not just when it is easy, but especially when it is hard. To love not as a performance, but as a state of being. If this video resonated with you, if it stirred something within you, if it reminded you of something you had forgotten, then you are already on the path. Because finding your soul is not about reaching a destination. It is about walking forward with awareness. It is about choosing, again and again, to listen to the quiet voice within, even when the world is loud. So I leave you with this final invitation. Sit in silence, breathe deeply, let go of everything you think you must be, and ask yourself gently, what does my soul want from this life? Listen closely. The answer is already there. And now, dear seeker, your journey begins.